Item H, receive report, review proposed ballot question and draft ordinance increasing transient occupancy tax from 10% to 12% and provide direction on whether to proceed with preparations to submit a ballot measure on the November 2009 ballot. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the action before you tonight is the first in several steps that staff is proposing will lead ultimately to the placement of an item on the November ballot asking the voters to consider the increase in our current transient occupancy tax, otherwise known as a bed tax or a hotel tax, from the current level of 10% to the proposed level of 12%. This action is taken in consideration as a strategy of the city's significant financial shortfall that is currently estimated at $2.2 million for fiscal year 9-10 as a result of the variety of issues that have accompanied the national and global economic recession, but specifically in San Bruno, resulting in a variety of impacts to significant revenue streams to the city. Specifically, we are projecting reductions, experiencing and projecting increasing and continuing reductions in our sales tax revenue, in our property tax revenue, potentially in our hotel tax or transient occupancy tax revenue, along with a significant downturn in our building and planning fee revenues resulting from the lack of significant building activity. Staff is currently, at the direction of the City Council, working aggressively to develop a comprehensive budget and service reduction program which will be presented to the City Council separately and subsequently, and will be an integral part of the budget that we present to you in June for your adoption. Again, as part of that overall strategy, staff is proposing that the City Council consider alone this item to be placed on the November ballot. I would note for your information and at the previous request of the City Council that we coordinate and collaborate with our neighboring jurisdictions as hotel occupancy might reasonably be considered, or the selection of a hotel might reasonably be considered one that a traveler would make within a region as opposed to within a specific jurisdiction like San Bruno. The City Council had previously asked staff to collaborate with the other jurisdictions locally to consider whether all of us might jointly and simultaneously on the November ballot take this action. The cities of Millbrae, Burlingame, and San Mateo have affirmatively identified their interest in proceeding similarly to the city of San Bruno in this manner. Those cities have not yet, to my knowledge, placed an item on their City Council agenda for actual direction and certainly not for any action to implement an ordinance that is a prerequisite for proceeding to the ballot. But our several discussions with those city staffs at the city manager and city attorney levels have clearly identified that those cities are intending, as we are requesting you tonight, to continue with your direction that we move in that manner. The city of San Bruno has had a transient occupancy on the books, transient occupancy tax on the books for many years. The transient occupancy tax amount was last increased by this city and by many other cities in the 1991 time period. And at that time, we went from an 8% tax rate level to the current 10%. As I indicated, the city of San Bruno and the other neighboring jurisdictions are looking at a 12% tax. That level is actually not unheard of in the state. It's my understanding that the city of Half Moon Bay, for example, in our county, is already collecting a 12% tax rate. And my understanding, just in informal discussions with my colleagues up and down the state, is that where the 12% amount is not already in effect, it is very commonly under consideration and discussion inside, as I indicated, as well as outside of San Mateo County. The proposed transient occupancy tax, the current transient occupancy tax is considered a general tax, and the increase in the tax rate would continue to be considered a general tax. That is, proceeds would be placed into the general fund for general municipal purposes. The actions that the City Council would need to take in order to proceed towards a ballot measure would be the approval of an implementing ordinance. That approval would have to be made by at least 2/3 of the City Council, and a majority voter approval, again, on the November 2009 ballot. In accordance with the normal procedures for placing an item on the general ballot, the deadline to submit ballot measures to the county for inclusion on the ballot is 88 days in advance of the election, or in this case, August 7th, 2009. So there is actually a little bit of time between now and then to take the various actions, including two readings that would be required for approval of an ordinance prior to that time. We're coming to the City Council relatively early, both in order to make sure that our actions are timely, but to make sure that we are proceeding consistent with the City Council's continuing interest and direction. The report that you have in front of you tonight details the timeline as well as the actions that would be required, and includes a proposed statement that would be used as the ballot question. Specifically, the ballot question, as we have currently crafted it, is, for general revenue purposes, shall an ordinance be approved increasing the current transient occupancy tax, TOT, charged to persons for the privilege of occupancy in any hotel or motel in the city of San Bruno from 10% to 12%. An additional item for the City Council's interest and consideration is a discussion that is occurring among our neighboring jurisdictions about whether to also utilize this ballot measure as an opportunity to seek recovery of transient occupancy tax on those reservations that are made at hotels and motels in San Bruno online. The City Council is aware and has previously directed that staff continue to monitor, and that we join in ongoing litigation that is being pursued in the city of Los Angeles to devise a way by which those revenues could be captured effectively. At this point, your staff is not recommending that we intermix those issues. In other words, that we try and capture online reservation TOT via the ballot measure. That is something that is of interest in other jurisdictions locally, and will be something that we will continue to discuss with them as we move along in this collaborative joint process. I bring it to your attention tonight just in order to, as an information item, but also in order to seek your guidance if you would wish us to pursue that a little bit more affirmatively. And again, you have already directed, and we are already pursuing the monitoring and the joining of the lawsuit that is currently going on in Los Angeles that would seek to essentially do the same thing. So with that, staff again is seeking your direction tonight. If you direct us to proceed as we have outlined, there will be several more actions that will come forward within the next 2 months, leading to a ballot measure on the November 2009 ballot.
I just had a question on regarding the reservations made through a third-party provider. We currently entered into that suit, and as part of the agreement in entering into that suit is that we not change our existing ordinance. So if we were to move forward and change that, it would require us to back out of that. And we've identified the loss of revenue to the city of San Bruno is relatively small amount money. So if we don't touch that issue, we move forward. If the lawsuit is won, it automatically provides that to the city. And if the lawsuit is lost, we wouldn't be able to enforce that anyway. So I would think we should just stay where we're at as far as that issue, and then we should move forward just with a straight question to the voters: shall we increase the tax from 10% to 12%, is being done pretty much throughout the state and in many other parts of the county.
I would just note along those lines that the amount of transient occupancy tax revenue that the city of San Bruno collects and the amount that we might reasonably expect from online reservations is relatively smaller, and maybe even substantially smaller than some of the other jurisdictions here in our area that we're talking about. So the issue that they might be considering and the reason they might be considering it might be different than ours. So staff doesn't see any disconnect for us to proceed with a straight TOT and them to perhaps do something different, but that's for your consideration.
Okay. We should probably have a motion on this to give staff direction. That
yes,
way
please.
It's clear. So
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.